The stars had belonged to the Valarac for 3,000 years. Every living being in the galaxy knew their name and feared it. They were 8 feet tall with thick black shells covering their bodies like armor. Their claws could cut through steel and acid dripped from their mouths when they spoke. Most terrifying of all, they moved faster than any other creature in space. The Valarac hunted other species for sport. They had wiped out 47 different races over the centuries. Each time it was the same story. The Valarac would arrive, kill everything that moved, and take what they wanted. No one had ever fought back successfully. No one had ever made them bleed. Commander Hyunwoo sat in his chair on the bridge of the New Seoul. He was reading reports from the outer colonies when the emergency signal came through. The message was weak and full of static, but he could make out enough words to understand. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was under attack. Set course for Kepler 442b, maximum speed. Hyunwoo ordered his crew. The journey would take 6 hours, but he hoped they would not be too late. The colony had 300 people living there, including families with children. When the New Seoul dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Hyunwoo saw the colony below. Smoke rose from burning buildings. No lights were on. No ships moved in the sky. Everything was quiet. "Take us down," he said quietly. The landing site was covered with pieces of metal and broken glass. The main building had huge claw marks across its walls. Some of the marks went straight through the thick steel like it was paper. Acid burns had melted holes in the walls and floors. The smell of death filled the air. Hyunwoo and his team searched through the ruins. They found bodies everywhere, but most were torn apart so badly they could not tell who they had been. The security office had been completely destroyed. The weapons locker was empty, but the guns lay scattered around, twisted into useless shapes. In the emergency shelter deep underground, they found 12 survivors. The group was led by an engineer named Mi Young. Her clothes were torn and she had cuts on her arms, but her eyes were still sharp and angry. "What happened here?" Hyunwoo asked. Mi Young looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "They came from the sky like black lightning. I have never seen anything move so fast." Their ships were silent until they opened fire. Our defense systems did nothing to stop them. She pointed to deep gouges in the shelter wall. "They tried to claw their way in here. 3 of them working together almost broke through the emergency door. That door was made to stop explosions." Another survivor, an old man named Kyung-ho, spoke up. "They were not trying to steal anything. They were hunting us, like we were animals. They would catch someone and play with them before killing them. I heard the screaming." Hyunwoo felt sick. "How many of them were there?" "Maybe 20, Mi Young said. "But they killed everyone so fast. Our security team had good weapons and training, but it did not matter. The creatures moved like water flowing around our shots. When they got close, nothing could stop them." She showed him a piece of metal that had been part of a security robot. The metal was twisted and had holes burned through it. Their acid spit went right through our armor, and their claws cut through everything like it was soft bread. Back on his ship, Hyunwoo sent a message to Earth Command. He included video recordings of the damage and statements from the survivors. The message would take weeks to reach Earth, but they needed to know what had happened. Far across the galaxy on a dark ship called the Bone Ripper, Captain Dong-min of the Valarac reviewed the hunt. His pack had killed 300 humans in less than an hour. It had been disappointing. These new creatures were even weaker than most prey species. Dong-min looked at his claws, still stained with human blood. The hunt had been too easy. The humans were slow and soft. Their weapons were primitive. They died quickly and did not provide much sport. He had hoped for a real challenge, but these creatures were hardly worth the effort. He walked to his communication station and sent a report to Valarac High Command. "New prey species discovered in Sector 77 Alpha. Species designation, human. Threat level, minimal. Physical capabilities, weak. Technology level, low. Recommend full harvesting operations. These creatures will provide adequate food supplies and slave labor." On the Valarac homeworld of Kraxit Prime, the message reached War Alpha Grakthor while he was eating his morning meal. He read the report while chewing on the bones of his last successful hunt. Another weak species had been found. Good. The Empire always needed more food and workers. Grakthor called together the Valarac Council. The 12 most powerful hunters in the Empire gathered in the Great Hall, their claws clicking on the stone floor as they walked. "We have found new prey," Grakthor announced. "They call themselves humans. Captain Dongmin reports they are weaker than the Zephyrians we finished last cycle. I propose we authorize hunting expeditions across all human territory. The other council members hissed their approval. It had been too long since they had found a new species to hunt. The galaxy was becoming boring. How many ships should we send? Asked War Beta Vashkol. Start with 50 hunting packs, Grakthor decided. If these humans are as weak as reported, that should be enough to clear several of their worlds. We can always send more ships if needed. The council agreed. Within days, Valorak hunting fleets began moving toward human space. They traveled in small groups, each pack containing one large ship and several smaller attack craft. Each pack carried enough warriors to destroy a small planet. The Valorak had done this 47 times before. They knew exactly how it would end. The humans would try to fight back with their weak weapons. They would send messages asking for help. They would try to negotiate, and then they would die, just like all the others. War Alpha Grakthor returned to his private chambers and looked at his wall of trophies. The skulls and bones of 47 different species hung there, each one representing a successful hunt. Soon he would add a human skull to his collection. The Valorak Empire had never lost a war. They had never been defeated in battle. They had never met a species that could match their speed, strength, or killing ability. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, and they knew it. In 6 months, Valorak hunting packs would strike at 12 human colonies simultaneously. It would be the beginning of what they expected to be a quick and easy extermination campaign. They had no idea they were about to meet their match. 6 months after the first attack, the Valorak returned in force. This time they did not come to one small mining colony. They came to 12 different human worlds at the same time. Each attack was planned to happen at exactly the same moment, so humans could not warn each other or send help. On New Busan, the Valorak landed during the morning rush hour. People were going to work and children were walking to school when the black ships appeared in the sky. The creatures poured out like a dark flood, their claws flashing in the sunlight. Within 2 hours, the planet's capital city was burning and 50,000 people were dead. On Sejong Station, a space habitat orbiting a gas giant, the Valorak ships attached themselves to the station like parasites. They cut through the outer hull with their acid and swarmed inside. The station's population of 100,000 had nowhere to run. The attacks were swift and brutal, but something different happened on Titan Station. Security Chief Jae-min was in his office when the alarm started screaming. He looked at his screens and saw 3 Valorak ships approaching the station. His heart sank. He had read the reports from Kepler 442b. He knew what was coming. All security teams to emergency positions, he announced over the station radio. This is not a drill. We are under attack by hostile aliens. Follow Emergency Protocol 7. Jaemin had 20 Marines under his command. They were good soldiers, but he knew it would not be enough. Still, he was not going to let these monsters kill his people without a fight. The Valorak ships latched onto the station's outer ring. Jaemin watched on his security cameras as the creatures began cutting through the hull. Acid smoke poured from the holes as the metal dissolved. Soon, the first Valorak warrior pushed through into the station. It was even more terrifying in person than in the videos. 8 feet tall, covered in black armor-like shell with claws that gleamed like knives. It moved with fluid grace, turning its head left and right as it searched for prey. Team Alpha, they are coming through Section 7. Jaemin said into his radio. Remember, do not try to fight them in close combat. Use the corridors and doorways to limit their movement. The first contact happened in Corridor C7. 3 Marines waited behind a barricade as 2 Valorak warriors approached. The aliens moved confidently, expecting easy kills like always. But when they rounded the corner, the Marines were ready. Explosive charges hidden in the walls detonated simultaneously. The blast threw both Valorak against the far wall. Before they could recover, the Marines opened fire with automatic weapons, aiming for the joints in their shell armor where Mi Young had said they might be vulnerable. One Valorak went down, black blood pooling under its body. The other roared in pain and rage before charging at the Marines. But it was wounded and moving slower. The Marines kept firing until it stopped moving. 2 down, reported Corporal Minsu. The explosives worked. Their armor has weak spots, Jaemin felt a moment of hope. Maybe they could actually fight these things. More Valorak poured into the station. Jaemin's teams used hit-and-run tactics, setting traps and ambushes throughout the station's maze of corridors. They used the station's own systems against the invaders. flooding sections with poisonous gas and cutting power to areas where the Valoraq were advancing. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 15 Valoraq warriors lay dead throughout the station. Jamin had lost 12 of his 20 Marines, but they had won. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had defeated the Valoraq in battle. Dr. Sora arrived on Titan Station 3 days later. She was a xenobiologist and expert in alien life forms. Her job was to study the dead Valoraq bodies and learn everything she could about their biology. "Incredible," she said as she examined the first corpse. "Look at this shell structure. It is incredibly strong, but only in certain directions. The joints where the shell segments meet are much weaker." She took samples of their blood and tissue. Their acid production comes from specialized glands in their throat and stomach. But the acid is actually quite simple chemically. Basic alkaline compounds would neutralize it completely. Sora spent days studying every aspect of Valoraq biology. She discovered that their incredible speed came from a unique muscle structure, but it required enormous amounts of energy. They could only maintain top speed for short periods before becoming exhausted. Most importantly, she found their weakness. The Valoraq had evolved on a world with very specific atmospheric conditions. Their respiratory system was extremely efficient in their native environment, but other gas mixtures could poison them quickly. "They are not as perfect as they seem," Sora reported to Earth Command. "They have adapted to be perfect hunters on their own world, but that specialization makes them vulnerable in other environments. We can use this." Admiral Taehyun received Sora's report at the same time as the news from the other 11 attacks. The Valoraq had killed millions of humans across 12 worlds. Entire colonies had been wiped out. But they had also lost warriors for the first time in centuries. He called an emergency meeting of the Human Colonial Council. Representatives from every human world gathered in the council chamber on Earth. The debate was fierce and emotional. "We should evacuate the outer colonies," said Representative Youngmai from the Centauri system. "We cannot fight these creatures. Look what they did to New Busan." "Running will not save us," argued Representative Hunseok from the Vega colonies. "They will hunt us down wherever we go. At least if we fight, we might take some of them with us." Representative Yoonji stood up slowly. She was old and had served on the council for 30 years. When she spoke, everyone listened. "I have read the reports from Titan Station," she said. 20 human Marines killed 15 Valoraq warriors. That means these creatures can be killed. If they can be killed, they can be defeated." She looked around the room at the frightened faces of her colleagues. "Yes, we will lose many people if we fight. But we will lose everyone if we do not fight. I propose we authorize full military action against the Valoraq Empire." The vote was close. 51 representatives voted to fight. 50 voted to evacuate or negotiate. By a single vote, humanity chose war. Admiral Taehyun began planning immediately. He ordered the construction of new weapons based on Sora's discoveries. He organized training programs to teach human soldiers how to fight Valoraq warriors. Most importantly, he started working on a plan to take the fight to the Valoraq instead of just defending human worlds. Meanwhile, Captain Jin Ho was leading the first human counterattack. His ship, the Soul Sword, had been modified with new weapons designed to exploit Valoraq weaknesses. Instead of waiting for the aliens to attack another human colony, Jin Ho took his crew to a Valoraq staging base in the Kepler system. The base was built on an asteroid and defended by 2 Valoraq warships. Jin Ho approached slowly, using stealth technology to avoid detection. When he was in position, he launched a coordinated attack. The new human weapons worked perfectly. Alkaline gas bombs neutralized the Valoraq acid attacks. Explosive charges targeted the weak points in their ship hulls. Most importantly, Jin Ho's crew used superior tactics instead of trying to match the Valoraq in close combat. The battle was over in 20 minutes. Both Valoraq ships were destroyed and the base was captured. Jin Ho's team found detailed information about Valoraq military operations, including the locations of other bases and the size of their invasion fleets. But most importantly, they had proven something crucial. Humans could not only fight the Valoraq, they could beat them. War Alpha Grakthor received the news while he was planning the next wave of attacks. The destruction of the staging base was impossible. The Valoraq had never lost a military installation to any enemy. He called Captain Dongmin to his command center. "Explain to me how these weak creatures destroyed an entire base." Dongmin shifted nervously. They used different tactics than we expected. Instead of fighting with honor, they attacked from long range and used poisonous gas. They fought like cowards. Grakthor's claws scraped against the metal table. Perhaps these humans were not as weak as they had seemed, but it did not matter. The Valarak had dealt with tricky enemies before. They would simply send more ships and more warriors. He had no idea that this was just the beginning. 1 year after the war began, the galaxy was watching something nobody had ever seen before. The humans were winning battles against the Valarak. Not just surviving, but actually defeating the creatures that had ruled space for 3,000 years. Lieutenant Minho led the team that developed what they called the Soul Maneuver. The tactic was simple but deadly. Human ships would use gravity bombs to disable Valarak vessels without destroying them. Then Marines in special armor would board the alien ships and fight the Valarak in their own territory. The first time they tried it, Minho was nervous. Boarding a Valarak ship seemed like suicide. But the new armor was designed using everything Dr. Sora had learned about Valarak biology. It was sealed against acid attacks and reinforced at the joints where Valarak claws were most likely to strike. The target was a Valarak destroyer that had been hunting human cargo ships. Minho's team used gravity bombs to knock out the ship's engines and weapons. Then they cut through the hull and went inside. The Valarak warriors inside were confused and angry. They had never been boarded before. They were used to being the ones doing the attacking. When the humans appeared in their corridors, the aliens charged forward with their usual tactics. But the humans were ready. They had studied hours of video showing how Valarak fought. They knew the aliens would try to get close and use their claws and acid, so the humans kept their distance and used their weapons to target the weak spots in the Valarak armor. It worked perfectly. In 30 minutes, Minho's team had killed all 18 Valarak on the ship and captured their computer systems. The information they found helped plan dozens of future attacks. The real breakthrough came when physicist Haywan invented what she called dissolution charges. She had been studying samples of Valarak shell armor and discovered something interesting. The chemicals that made their shells so strong could be turned against them. Their armor is strong because of a specific protein structure, Haywan explained to Admiral Taehyun. But if we introduce certain compounds, the protein breaks down completely. The shell becomes as fragile as glass. The first dissolution charges were used in the Battle of Proxima Station. A Valarak attack fleet of 12 ships arrived expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found human ships armed with the new weapons. When the dissolution charges detonated near the Valarak ships, something amazing happened. The alien vessels literally began falling apart. Their hulls cracked and split. Their weapons stopped working. Warriors inside the ships found their own armor becoming brittle and useless. The battle lasted only 15 minutes. All 12 Valarak ships were destroyed. Not a single human vessel was lost. General Kyungmin was the one who figured out how to use humanity's greatest advantage against the Valarak. The aliens were evolved for close combat, but humans had always been tool users. Instead of trying to match Valarak speed and strength, humans would use technology to fight from a distance. He developed the Swarm Protocol. Instead of sending ships to fight Valarak vessels directly, human fleets would release thousands of small automated drones. Each drone carried dissolution charges and was programmed to target Valarak weak points. The Valarak had no defense against this kind of attack. Their warriors were trained to fight other warriors, not clouds of tiny robots. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not for shooting down hundreds of small targets at once. The first major test of the Swarm Protocol was the defense of New Sol. Valarak invasion fleet of 50 ships arrived to find the human colony protected by what looked like a cloud of metal insects. The drones swarmed over the Valarak ships like angry bees, each one delivering its deadly payload before being destroyed. Within an hour, the entire Valarak fleet was drifting wreckage. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia had been defeated by robots the size of dinner plates. But it was Commander Su Jin who achieved the first complete victory over a Valarak occupation force. The planet New Busan had been under alien control for 8 months. The Valarak had killed most of the human population and were using the survivors as slave labor. Su Jin's approach was different from anything tried before. Instead of attacking the Valarak directly, she attacked their environment. Her ships used atmospheric processors to flood the planet's air with compounds that were harmless to humans, but deadly to Valarak biology. The alien warriors had never encountered chemical warfare before. Their shells could protect them against physical attacks, but they had to breathe. Within hours of the atmospheric change, Vallorak soldiers began collapsing throughout the occupied cities. Human rescue teams wearing sealed suits moved through the planet's settlements. They found thousands of dead Vallorak warriors and freed the surviving human prisoners. Not a single shot had been fired, but the entire occupation force was eliminated. The victory at New Busan sent shockwaves through the Vallorak Empire. For the first time in their history, they had lost an entire planet without their enemy even engaging them in direct combat. The humans were fighting in ways the Vallorak could not understand or counter. On Kraxit Prime, War Alpha Grakthor paced in his command chamber like a caged animal. Reports of defeats were arriving daily. Entire fleets were being destroyed. Planets were being lost. The Empire was shrinking for the first time in 3,000 years. How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors. These creatures were weak. They had primitive weapons. They moved slowly and died easily. War Beta Vashkol brought the latest battle reports. They are not fighting like other species have fought us. They do not try to match our strength. Instead, they use weapons we have never seen and tactics we do not understand. Grakthor studied the reports of the Swarm Protocol attacks. The idea of using thousands of tiny drones instead of warships was completely alien to Vallorak thinking. They were hunters who believed in the honor of personal combat. These human tactics seemed cowardly and dishonorable, but they were working. Perhaps we should try to negotiate with them, suggested War Gamma Theknol. Offer them tribute or a portion of the galaxy to rule. We have made such arrangements with other species when it served our purposes. Grakthor's claws extended in anger. The Vallorak do not negotiate with prey. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We do not bow to soft-skinned mammals no matter what tricks they have learned. He made a decision that would doom his species. Instead of adapting to human tactics or seeking peace, he chose to escalate the war. He ordered all Vallorak fleets to return to Kraxit Prime for a massive final assault on human space. We will gather our full strength, he announced to the Vallorak High Council. 1 million warriors and 1,000 ships. We will sweep through human territory and kill every last one of them. This war ends now, the Council agreed enthusiastically. They could not imagine any force in the galaxy standing against the full might of the Vallorak Empire. They had no idea that they were about to face an enemy that had learned not just to fight them, but to hunt them. Admiral Tae-Hyun received intelligence reports about the massive Vallorak fleet gathering at Kraxit Prime. His staff expected him to order all human forces to defensive positions. Instead, he began planning the largest offensive operation in human history. They are bringing all their ships to one place, he told his planning committee. This is not a threat, it is an opportunity. We know where they all are. We can hit them before they have a chance to spread out again. General Kyung-min agreed. The Swarm Protocol works best against large concentrations of enemy ships. If they give us 1,000 targets in one location, we can destroy them all at once. The human military began the largest mobilization in their history. Every ship, every drone, every weapon was prepared for the final battle. They were going to meet the Vallorak at their own homeworld and end this war once and for all. Dr. Sora made one final contribution to the war effort. She had been studying captured Vallorak technology and made a disturbing discovery. The aliens had been developing biological weapons designed to kill humans specifically. If the war continued much longer, they might succeed in creating a plague that could wipe out humanity. We have to end this quickly, she warned Admiral Tae-Hyun. If they have time to perfect these weapons, they could kill every human in the galaxy without ever sending another ship. The Admiral nodded grimly. The time for defensive tactics was over. Humanity was going to take the war to the Vallorak homeworld and finish what the aliens had started. The final battle was coming, and this time, only one species would survive. 3 years after the first Vallorak attack, the galaxy had become a very different place. The creatures that had ruled space for 3,000 years were now the ones running and hiding. Human fleets moved through the stars like death itself, hunting down every Vallorak ship and base they could find. Admiral Young-Soo commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. 500 warships moved in perfect formation toward the Vallorak border worlds. Each ship carried thousands of drones, dissolution charges, and new weapons that the Vallorak had never seen before. This was not conquest. This was extermination. The first target was Vextar Prime, a heavily defended Vallorak military world. The planet had underground bunkers, orbital defense stations, and a garrison of 50,000 Valarac warriors. It should have been impossible to take. Youngsu's fleet arrived at the edge of the system and began their attack without warning. Wave after wave of drones swept toward the planet like a metal storm. The Valarac defenses tried to stop them, but there were simply too many targets to hit. The drones reached the orbital stations first. Dissolution charges ate through the alien metal like acid through paper. Within minutes, the massive defense platforms were breaking apart and falling toward the planet below. On the surface, Valarac ground forces watched in horror as their supposedly impregnable defenses crumbled. They had never seen anything like this coordinated swarm attack. Their weapons could destroy individual drones, but for every one they shot down, 10 more took its place. The human ships did not even need to enter the planet's atmosphere. They simply released more and more drones until every Valarac installation on the surface was destroyed. When the attack was over, Vextar Prime was a dead world covered in the wreckage of alien technology. Colonel Hyojin specialized in what the humans now called extinction operations. Her job was to make sure that when human forces took a Valarac world, nothing remained that could threaten humanity in the future. She led the ground teams that landed on conquered planets after the orbital bombardment was complete. They carried special equipment designed to detect any surviving Valarac, hiding in underground bunkers or caves. When they found them, they used atmospheric conversion weapons to flood the hiding places with toxic gas. "We are not taking prisoners," Hyojin told her teams before each mission. "These creatures have shown us what they do to other species. We cannot allow any of them to survive and rebuild their empire. It was brutal work, but necessary." The Valarac had wiped out 47 other species without mercy. Now they were learning what extinction felt like from the other side. The real breakthrough in human technology came from Dr. Sang Min's research division. He had been studying Valarac genetics and made a discovery that changed everything. The alien DNA had specific sequences that made them vulnerable to targeted biological weapons. "I can create what I call genetic dissolution bombs," Sang Min explained to the military commanders. "These weapons target the genetic structure of Valarac cells specifically. They will not harm humans or any other species, but they will cause immediate cellular collapse in any Valarac they touch." The first test of the genetic bombs was against a Valarac fleet near the Rigel system. 30 alien warships were traveling in formation when human ships appeared and launched the new weapons. The bombs did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they released a cloud of engineered particles that sought out Valarac DNA. The results were horrifying and effective. Within minutes, every Valarac warrior on all 30 ships simply stopped existing. Their bodies dissolved at the molecular level, leaving behind only empty armor and weapons. The ships continued flying on autopilot with no living crew aboard. Human boarding teams found the vessels completely empty. Thousands of Valarac warriors had been reduced to nothing more than stains on the floor. The genetic bombs were the perfect weapon against an enemy that had shown no mercy to others. As news of human victories spread, other species in the galaxy began to react with a mixture of gratitude and terror. The Valarac had oppressed dozens of civilizations for centuries. Many species were glad to see their tormentors finally defeated. But the way humans were winning the war frightened everyone. This was not just military victory. It was complete annihilation of an entire species. Ambassador Jiwoo tried to explain humanity's position to the Galactic Council. "The Valarac declared war on us," she said calmly. "They attacked our colonies without warning or negotiation. They killed millions of our people and planned to enslave or exterminate our entire species. We are simply responding in kind." The alien representatives shifted nervously in their seats. They had seen the recordings of human military operations. Entire Valarac fleets vanishing without a trace. Planets left as lifeless rocks floating in space. This level of destruction was beyond anything they had imagined possible. "But surely you could accept their surrender," suggested the Centaurian ambassador. "You have proven your strength. You could force them to submit without total destruction." Jiwoo's expression did not change. "The Valarac have never accepted surrender from their victims. They wiped out 47 species completely. They showed no mercy to children, civilians, or non-combatants. Why should we show them mercy they would never give to others?" The truth was that the Valarac had already tried to surrender several times. War Alpha Grakthor had sent messages offering tribute, territory, even complete submission. But humanity's response was always the same: Commander Wu Jin delivered the official human position to the Valarac leadership. You declared us prey. You hunted our people for sport. You plan to exterminate our species. There will be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. We will remove you from existence. The final major Valarac stronghold was the fortress world of Crackmore. Built inside a hollowed-out moon, it contained the largest concentration of Valarac military equipment in the galaxy. 100,000 warriors defended the base along with their most advanced weapons and ships. Captain Ye Jin was assigned to destroy Crackmore, but she had a different plan than previous attacks. Instead of sending in drones or using orbital bombardment, she decided to try something that had never been done before. Her ships used gravity manipulation technology to redirect a large asteroid toward Crackmore. The asteroid was accelerated to nearly the speed of light before impact. When it hit the fortress moon, the result was an explosion visible from several star systems away. The impact completely vaporized Crackmore and everything on it. 100,000 Valarac warriors, their ships, their weapons, and their base were turned to plasma in an instant. It was the single largest loss of life in Valarac history. More importantly, it demonstrated that humans could destroy entire worlds if necessary. The message to any remaining Valarac was clear. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, and no hope of survival. War Alpha Grakthor received the news of Crackmore's destruction while hiding in his bunker on Craxit Prime. The fortress moon had been considered absolutely impregnable. If humans could destroy it so easily, they could destroy anything. For the first time in his life, Grakthor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not the excitement of hunting dangerous prey, but the cold terror of being hunted himself. The humans were not just defeating the Valarac Empire. They were erasing it from existence, one world at a time. He looked at his collection of trophies from 47 extinct species. Skulls and bones from creatures that had once lived and breathed and hoped for survival. Now he understood how they must have felt in their final moments. The Valarac had become the prey, and their predators showed no signs of stopping until every last one of them was dead. Outside his bunker, the sounds of human ships filled the sky. They had come to Craxit Prime at last. The final hunt was about to begin, and this time the Valarac were the ones who would not survive. The human fleet arrived at Craxit Prime like a dark cloud covering the stars. 1,000 ships surrounded the Valarac homeworld, carrying enough firepower to destroy 100 planets. General Seok Jin stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the world that had spawned the galaxy's former apex. Predators, begin the final operation, he ordered quietly. The attack on Craxit Prime was different from all previous human operations. This time they took their time. They wanted to be thorough. They wanted to make sure that when this day was over, the Valarac species would be nothing more than a memory. The first wave was atmospheric conversion weapons. Human ships released clouds of engineered particles into Craxit Prime's atmosphere. The particles were designed to react with the specific gases that Valarac lungs needed to breathe. Within hours, the air itself became poisonous to the aliens. Valarac civilians and warriors alike began dying in the streets of their cities. They tried to retreat to underground bunkers, but the poisoned air followed them. Their advanced life support systems could not filter out the human-made toxins. War Alpha Grakthor sealed himself in his deepest command bunker with the last few hundred Valarac military leaders. The bunker had been built to survive planetary bombardment and could maintain its own atmosphere for years. But even there, they could hear the sounds of their species dying above them. The second wave was genetic dissolution bombs. These weapons were dropped directly onto the planet's surface, seeking out any remaining Valarac DNA. The bombs did not just kill the aliens, they erased them. Bodies dissolved at the molecular level, leaving behind only empty armor and weapons. Dr. He-jin watched the operation from orbit, recording everything for the historical archives. As the lead xenoarchaeologist for the mission, her job was to catalog the end of the Valarac civilization before it was completely destroyed. Total population elimination proceeding as planned, she reported to Earth Command. No signs of resistance or survival attempts. The atmospheric conversion appears to be 100% effective. Cities that had stood for thousands of years became silent graveyards. Massive Valarac monuments and palaces stood empty, their builders extinct. The proud civilization that had conquered 47 other species was dying in a matter of hours. The third wave was orbital bombardment using kinetic weapons. Human ships dropped tungsten rods from high orbit, striking every major Valarac facility on the planet. Government buildings, military bases, spaceports, and communication centers were all reduced to craters filled with molten metal. But the humans were not finished. They wanted to make sure that no trace of Valarac culture or technology survived. Archive buildings containing thousands of years of alien history were targeted specifically. Libraries, museums, and research facilities were all destroyed. In his bunker, War Alpha Grakthor listened to the destruction of his world through seismic sensors. Each impact above registered as an earthquake in his shelter. His species' entire heritage was being systematically erased. He tried one last time to contact the human fleet. "This is War Alpha Grakthor of the Valarac Empire," he broadcast on all frequencies. "I formally surrender. I offer complete submission and tribute. Please spare what remains of my species." The response came from Fleet Admiral Namjoon himself. "The Valarac Empire declared humans to be prey. You hunted our civilians for sport. You planned our complete extermination. There will be no mercy, because you would have shown none. Your species ends today." Grakthor understood then that this had never been about conquest or territory. The humans were not trying to rule the Valarac or use them as slaves. They were not even fighting for revenge. They were simply removing a threat by eliminating it completely. The final wave was the one that finished the job. Human ships released specialized nanobots designed to break down any remaining organic matter on the planet's surface. The microscopic machines consumed every trace of Valarac biology, from dead bodies to genetic material to organic compounds in the soil. Within 6 hours, Kraxit Prime was a sterile rock. No life remained anywhere on the surface. The atmosphere was poisonous. The water was contaminated. Even if any Valarac had somehow survived in deep bunkers, they would find only a dead world waiting for them. But there were no survivors in bunkers. The final genetic dissolution bomb had been saved for War Alpha Grakthor himself. General Seok Jin's teams located the command bunker and used drilling equipment to reach it. They pumped the genetic weapon directly into the sealed chamber. Grakthor felt his body beginning to dissolve at the cellular level. As the last War Alpha of the Valarac Empire died, he had one final thought. His species had hunted 47 others to extinction without remorse. Now they knew how it felt to be the prey. The operation was completed in exactly 12 hours. The Valarac homeworld was dead, and their species was extinct. But the humans were still not finished. Over the following months, they systematically hunted down every remaining Valarac in the galaxy. Small groups hiding on remote worlds. Individual survivors trying to blend in with other species. Even Valarac prisoners held by other civilizations. All were found and eliminated. The genetic bombs made the job easier. Human ships could scan entire star systems and detect even a single Valarac from light years away. There was nowhere to hide from weapons that targeted their DNA specifically. Captain Jun Seo led the final mission of the Valarac extinction campaign. Intelligence reports had located 3 Valarac survivors on a mining station in an isolated system. His team boarded the station and found the aliens working as laborers under false identities. The execution was quick and clean. Genetic dissolution weapons left no mess and no evidence. The other species on the station never knew that the last members of the galaxy's former ruling species had just been eliminated. Jun Seo filed his report using the standard military format. Mission completed. Targets eliminated. No complications. Valarac species status extinct. 5 years after the war began, it was over. The Valarac Empire no longer existed. Their species was extinct. Their worlds were empty. Their technology was destroyed. Even their name would only be remembered in human military archives as a warning to other species. The galaxy reacted with shock and awe. Many species celebrated the end of their former oppressors. The Valarac had been tyrants and murderers who showed no mercy to anyone. Their destruction meant freedom for dozens of civilizations. But others were terrified by what humanity had accomplished. Complete extermination of an entire species was something that had never been done before, not even by the Valarac themselves. They had enslaved and oppressed other races, but they had never wiped one out so thoroughly. Ambassador Sung Ho addressed the Galactic Council for the final time regarding the Valarac situation. The chamber was unusually quiet as representatives from hundreds of species listened to his words. "Let this be a lesson," he said calmly. Humanity seeks peaceful cooperation with all species. We offer trade, friendship, and mutual defense agreements to any civilization willing to treat us with respect. But any species that threatens our people, that hunts our civilians, that plans our destruction, will be removed from existence. He looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. The Vallorak believed they were apex predators. They learned too late that predators can become prey. We hope no other species makes the same mistake. The Council voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership and recognition as a major galactic power. No one wanted to risk becoming the next species to test human military capabilities. In the years that followed, peace and prosperity spread throughout the galaxy. Without the Vallorak Empire oppressing them, dozens of species began to flourish. Trade routes opened. Technology was shared freely. Art and culture bloomed in ways that had been impossible under alien rule. Humanity took its place as one of the galaxy's leading civilizations. They shared their technology freely with peaceful species and helped rebuild worlds that had been damaged by Vallorak attacks. They became known as protectors of the weak and defenders of freedom, but they were also known for something else. In the deepest archives of every species, the story of the Vallorak extinction was carefully preserved. Parents told their children about the creatures who had thought they were the galaxy's ultimate predators, and what had happened to them when they met humanity. The lesson was simple and clear. Never mistake human kindness for weakness. Never confuse their peaceful nature with inability to fight, and never ever threaten their families and children. The stars were quiet now where Vallorak fleets had once roamed. In that silence, the galaxy had learned a new truth. The most dangerous predator was not the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It was the one smart enough to build better weapons and ruthless enough to use them. Humanity had proven that they were that predator, and every species in the galaxy would remember that lesson for generations to come.